Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life.
So imagine a massive multinational corporation, right? They've got dedicated HR departments.
Oh, and aggressive recruitment quotas.
Yeah, exactly. Carefully managed night shifts, strict performance reviews for their middle managers, a whole corporate 9 yards.
Right, but their only product, the entire focus of this massive operation, is just ruining your life.
It's terrifying. Today, we're stepping far away from that old stereotype of, a lone hacker in a basement.
Yeah, that image is way out of date.
Completely. We are looking at a $64 billion global industry, and it is meticulously engineered to drain your savings, utilizing modern corporate structures and honestly just weaponized psychology.
And we have some incredible source material for this deep dive. We're pulling this all apart using 2 very recent, heavily detailed press releases from the U.S. Department of Justice.
Right. They were dated late April 2026.
Yeah, and they map out this massive, highly coordinated takedown of industrial-scale transnational scam centers, mostly operating out of Southeast Asia.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack how these cyber fraud empires actually work, right? We're going to look at the devastating human cost on both sides of the screen.
Both sides, yeah. That's a huge part of this.
And we'll break down the unprecedented global law enforcement alliance that's fighting back. Because, in our era of just constant information overload, understanding the actual mechanics of these highly sophisticated scams is really the ultimate shortcut to protecting yourself and your family.
It's the only way to stay safe.
Exactly. Now, really quickly, before we jump in, a quick note on impartiality. This deep dive covers government actions driven by a recent presidential executive order.
Right.
We are going to impartially report on the facts and the strategies outlined in our sources without taking any political sides. We're just here to understand the mechanics. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
I think most of us still have this outdated image in our heads of a scammer. We picture a single guy sending poorly spelled emails about a trapped Nigerian prince.
Yeah, right. And that mental model is actually dangerous because it makes us complacent.
Yeah, it feels small time.
Exactly. It feels easily avoidable. But these DOJ documents detail a financial scale that completely shatters that preconceived notion.
The numbers are just staggering.
They really are. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, IC3, reports that documented losses from these scams hit $7.2 billion in 2025.
Wow.
And that's just in the U.S. That is a 24% jump from 2024.
A 24% jump in 1 year. And globally, the estimates are approaching $64 billion annually.
It's almost hard to wrap your head around.
It is. When you hear a number like 64 billion, it just becomes white noise. But if you break that down, it means every single day, these operations are pulling in roughly $175 million.
Yeah, and you do not generate $175 million a day with, a couple of guys running a phishing script in a garage.
No, absolutely not. It functions just like a multinational tech corporation.
Right. The DOJ documents explicitly name these organizations, like the Shinda compound in Burma, or these entities with registered corporate names, like Coet Company, which actually goes by the alias Pixie and Giant Company. These are industrial-scale compounds.
They're basically tech campuses.
Exactly.
The documents detail how they have these hierarchical organizations, right? Upper management, middle managers for specific floors.
Even HR teams just for recruitment.
Yes. And they specifically stagger their workforce with targeted night shifts, so they align with U.S. daytime hours. Their product is just pure financial devastation.
What's fascinating here is why this specific corporate structure makes the scams so effective.
Right. Why go through all that trouble?
Well, it comes down to compartmentalization. When you run an illicit syndicate like a corporation, you can optimize every single step of the psychological manipulation.
So it's not just one person talking to you the whole time.
Exactly. You have a lead generation team whose only job is blasting out initial contact messages. If they get a bite, they pass the victim to a relationship-building team.
Wow.
And then, once the victim is primed, they hand them over to the closers.
The senior scammers?
Yep, the ones who actually extract the massive financial transfers. By compartmentalizing the fraud, syndicates can A/B test their scripts and scale up exponentially. This borderless corporate structure is exactly why taking them down requires a borderless response.
Right, and that compartmentalization, it also isolates the workers from the big picture. Which brings us to the really twisted human element of this.
Yeah, this is the darkest part.
Because the employees filling those night shifts at the Shunda compound, they are, in many cases, victims themselves. We are talking about severe human trafficking here.
The DOJ detailed the seizure of a Telegram channel. It had over 6,000 followers.
6,000 people looking for work.
Right. And the syndicate used this channel to lure desperate job seekers to Cambodia with promises of, high-paying tech jobs.
But the specific job requirements in that channel, they tell the real story. They weren't looking for coders.
No, not at all.
They specifically asked for individuals with American accents, people willing to work night shifts, and they actually placed specific requests for attractive females.
They were hunting for the exact demographic profiles that would immediately lower the defenses of an American audience on a video call.
It's so calculated. And the moment those recruits actually arrive in Cambodia or Thailand, the illusion of a tech job just vanishes.
Immediately. Their passports and IDs are seized by compound security.
The DOJ reports detail this horrific environment. These trafficked workers face beatings, electrocution, even murder if they don't comply and meet their extraction quotas.
Right. The documents specifically name 2 managers of the Shunda compound, Huang Xingshan and Jiang Wenji. They were criminally charged.
And Huang is alleged to have personally participated in the physical punishment. So the person on the other end of the phone who's actively trying to steal your savings...
They're operating under the immediate threat of torture.
Exactly. It's just so dark.
It injects this intense, desperate psychological pressure into the interaction. The worker has to successfully manipulate you just to ensure their own physical survival.
And the scripts they're forced to use are just incredibly refined.
They are. The documents outline 2 primary tactics. The first is what the syndicates internally call pig butchering.
Ugh, it is a genuinely sickening term. It's basically a crypto romance or friendship scam. And the way it starts is so incredibly mundane.
Just a text message.
Yeah. It looks like an accident. Like, hey, is this John's vet? I need to reschedule the dog's appointment.
And when you say, sorry, wrong number, they don't stop.
No, they pivot. They apologize, say you seem incredibly polite, and they just strike up a conversation.
That accidental text is the hook. From there, those compartmentalized teams take over. They spend months building a relationship, fabricating a life.
Faking affection.
Exactly. They slowly introduce the idea that they've been making incredible returns trading crypto. They are literally fattening up the victim with fake trust.
And then comes the slaughter. They convince the victim to download a trading app, make a small investment. The victim logs in, sees a dashboard showing huge returns, and decides to invest more.
But that dashboard is just the simulation.
Right. The money went directly to the syndicate's wallets the second it left the bank account.
It's brutal. Now, the second primary tactic the indictments highlight is an elaborate law enforcement impersonation script.
This one is wild.
It relies heavily on a concept called credibility stacking.
Which, okay, this script is terrifying because of how complex it is. Like, you receive a call from someone posing as a bank rep from JP Morgan Chase saying your account was used to buy firearms online.
And then they seamlessly transfer you to a detective at the NYPD.
Right. Who eventually escalates you to a judge at the New York Supreme Court. Wait, how do people actually fall for the NYPD firearms thing? It sounds so elaborate. Shouldn't red flags go off?
And it's easy to spot the logical flaws from the outside, sure.
Yeah.
But that underestimates the psychological weaponization happening in real time. These syndicates execute an intentional hijack of the victim's amygdala, their fight-or-flight response.
Oh, wow.
They don't just call you. They use sustained multi-platform pressure.
Yeah.
They start on the phone, but then they immediately pull you into a Microsoft Teams meeting.
Right, switching platforms.
Exactly. Then they start messaging you on WhatsApp with forged, official-looking legal documents with government seals.
So they're coming at you from everywhere.
Right. By rapidly moving the victim across different digital platforms and passing them up a fabricated chain of authority figures, they completely bypass the victim's critical thinking.
They create this simulated reality of an absolute crisis. You aren't thinking logically about banking procedures. You're just terrified of going to jail.
And remember, these scripts are refined through trial and error across thousands of victims.
They know exactly what words trigger compliance. The DOJ highlighted one American victim who was caught in this exact web and drained of over $3 million.
$3 million?
Yeah. And inside the Shunda compound, under the supervision of Manager Jiang, they celebrated it as a paradigm of success.
Unbelievable.
It was a textbook example to train the rest of the trafficked workforce.
That single detail really captures the industrialization of this crime. They are refining the destruction of human lives into a repeatable corporate process.
And that manipulation explains their horrific success rate. It also explains why traditional banking security completely fails to stop it. Which brings us to the real-world fallout for the victims and how law enforcement is trying to step in.
Right. The strike force recently seized 503 fake .com investment domains.
Those were the fake dashboards we mentioned earlier, right? Disguised as legitimate platforms.
Exactly. But seizing domains is just playing whack-a-mole.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The FBI and the Secret Service have this initiative called Operation Level Up.
Yeah, this is crucial.
I look at Operation Level Up, and it's like an early warning missile defense system. But instead of tracking a warhead, they have to essentially intercept people who think they are getting rich and convince them they are actually being robbed.
Operation Level Up focuses entirely on proactive victim notification. Law enforcement monitors the digital fingerprints of these scam centers.
Tracking IP addresses, following crypto.
Following the money mules, yeah. And when they see an American citizen actively interacting with that malicious infrastructure, they intervene.
They literally call the victim. They have to tell them the person they're dating or this amazing investment is actually a syndicate emptying their accounts.
And their stats are impressive. Over $562 million saved and nearly 9,000 victims notified.
But the tragic reality is that 77% of those victims were completely unaware they were being scammed when law enforcement called. 77%.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a fundamental vulnerability. The global financial system relies entirely on trust and user authentication.
Right.
If a hacker breaches your account, the bank's automated systems flag the anomaly. But in these scams, the victims are willingly logging in.
Right. They pass the two-factor checks from their own IP address.
Exactly. They authorize the transfers themselves because they believe the narrative. When victims willingly transfer money, believing they're investing, traditional banking safeguards fail.
The bank just sees an authorized user. They don't know the user is being manipulated on WhatsApp on another device.
Precisely. That's why proactive victim notification is really the only viable defense.
And the human fallout from this is just devastating. The specific examples in the DOJ source are incredibly tough to read.
They are heartbreaking.
Victims were liquidating their 401ks, selling their homes. There was an elderly man surviving on disability who had already wired $1,200.
And he was about to send more. Right.
Yeah, he was going to sacrifice his actual food budget. And perhaps the darkest detail, 93 victims had to be immediately referred for suicide intervention upon realizing what happened.
It's a complete psychological and financial collapse.
Yeah.
Which requires a totally different approach from law
You
enforcement.
can't stop a borderless crime with local warrants. How do you stop it? With a borderless alliance.
Exactly.
The DOJ announced the creation of the Scam Center Strike Force in November 2025. This operates alongside the Homeland Security Task Force from an earlier executive order.
Right.
And then, on March 6, 2026, President Trump signed an executive order directing a whole-of-government strategy against these syndicates.
Using diplomatic, intelligence, and financial tools all at once. Traditionally, these agencies, Treasury, domestic law enforcement, intelligence, they operate in silos.
Different jurisdictions.
Right, they don't share raw intelligence easily. This directive forces them to operate from a single playbook.
And the results are staggering. 276 arrests, 9 scam centers totally dismantled.
The international cooperation is what's truly unprecedented here.
It's like an incredible geopolitical crossover episode. You have the FBI, the U.S. Secret Service, the Dubai Police, the Chinese Ministry of Public Security, and the Royal Thai Police all working together.
Yeah, countries that normally don't share their toys are forced to collaborate because this threat is just that massive.
Exactly. It's affecting everyone's citizens.
And they're hitting the financial lifeblood, too. They restrained $700 million in crypto.
$700 million. And tracing that crypto is a huge technical feat.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, the Treasury Department issued heavy sanctions against major Cambodian operators.
Right, specifically Senator Kokhan and Rithi Raxme, just locking them out of the global financial system.
And the State Department put up a $10 million reward regarding the Tai Chang compound in Burma.
The private sector is finally helping out too, right? Meta, JP Morgan Chase, Microsoft.
Yeah, they're implementing measures to disrupt the infrastructure. This raises an important question regarding sovereignty and jurisdiction.
How so?
For decades, criminals hid behind international borders. They'd victimize Americans while sitting in a jurisdiction with no extradition treaty.
Right, using the border as a shield.
but the era of criminals hiding safely behind borders is ending. This borderless fraud meets borderless justice approach is a fundamental shift in global law enforcement.
So what does this all mean? If we distill this deep dive down, the main takeaway is that you have to radically update your mental model of a scammer.
Absolutely.
These aren't annoying spam calls. They are multi-billion-dollar criminal syndicates using trafficked slave labor and weaponized psychology to drain your life savings.
They bypass your logic entirely.
Yeah, right. So you have to maintain a healthy skepticism online. Protect your friends and family. Look out for red flags like intense pressure tactics or unsolicited investment advice. If a wrong number text turns into a chat about crypto, block them immediately.
Exactly. And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up.
Okay.
We've spent this time breaking down how these syndicates manufacture trust. But consider the long-term invisible damage this does to society.
Yeah.
If transnational syndicates can successfully impersonate our major banks, convincingly act as our local police, and even build intimate, months-long romantic relationships with us across borders using scripts, how does this permanently alter our baseline of trust in all digital communication going forward?
That is a chilling thought.
Are we entering an era where we have to fundamentally assume every digital interaction is hostile until proven otherwise?
Wow. That really makes you think about how we navigate our digital lives. You really have to guard your trust fiercely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, and please stay safe out there.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.